Hello everyone. So I'm gonna show you another feature of what if analysis called the scenario manager. Okay, and what this is for is to generate many hypothetical possibilities so that you can compare them. And the use of this is when you compare many different scenarios, you can kind of use those scenarios to make decisions, like either business decisions or decisions. Okay, so uh, I've set up a rather complex example, which we'll do second. We'll actually do a very simple example first. Let me just talk a little bit about this. So for example, I call this example the responsible student, where life planning, you're not always going to be students, you're not always going to be depending on your parents and whatnot. And as a responsible student, you might get a job and you take care of your own expenses, and judging from that, you can see how much money, or if you do have money left over, or if you're in the negative. Okay, but more on that in a second. So let's just set up a very, very simple example. Let's say I'm a business and I make you know phones, whatever, cellular phones. I'm trying to compete with Samsung, Apple, whatever. And depending on how I make the phones, I can have a certain cost to making the phones, and then I make a certain amount of money. And of course, as you know, whatever money I make, subtract the cost, and that's what I have in the end. Okay, so let's set that up. Let's just do a very easy example. Let's say I have a revenue of 100 and cost of 50. Net is just equal to revenue minus costs. Enter. Okay, let's do some formatting. Dollars, dollars. Oh no, panic, right? What does that mean, right? If you remember, all that means is your data is too big for your cells. Just make your cells a little bit bigger. Okay. If you want, you can keep testing this out if you want. 200, and you can see that it checks out. Okay, so based on this, let's go into what if analysis, and let's start making some scenarios. Okay, so scenario manager, and here is where you make all the scenarios you want. You can make 2, you can make 4, 20, whatever. Okay, so let's add a scenario, and let's call this high quality. Okay, because I might consider, making phones. I might want to make like a really high quality phone. Okay, it might cost me more, but then of course I can charge more. A good example might be like the iPhone, for example. They make a very high quality phone. They charge you an arm and a leg for it, but they probably make a killing from it. Okay, so this scenario, changing cells, this is important. Which are the cells that are going to be changing depending on the scenario? And I would say both of these will be changing. Okay. And now I'll tell you, set the values to that. So I imagine that if I'm making a high quality phone, I'm going to have really big revenues, because I'm going to sell these phones for like 1,500, right? And I'm going to end up with like 23,000 dollars of sales. Okay, that's my prediction. And the cost, I can, all the parts and paying the labor and stuff like that, it's gonna cost me, let's say, 10,000. Okay, so there's my first scenario. Okay, let's add another scenario, and let's say I go the other way and I make a really cheap phone, right? And it's gonna cost me almost nothing to make, because I'm gonna, use really bad parts, but I'm also going to charge less of a price. So instead of charging 1,500 for a phone, I'm going to charge like 300 for a phone. Okay, so let's add that, and low quality, and changing cells, it's still going to be those two. Okay, and let's say that I estimate revenues to be a little bit less, so not 23,000, but let's say 12,000. Okay, in sales. I'm going to sell lots of these at low price. And to make these, let's say, yeah, I use really, cheap parts, and it only cost me 3,000. Okay, so generating from that, let's have a quick prediction. Which do you think am I going to make more money using? Selling a high quality phone or selling a low quality phone? Okay, so based on those numbers, maybe you were able to calculate in your head already. I've already lost track of everything. Okay, so once you have all the scenarios that you want to create, you might want to create more scenarios like medium quality and, you know, produce in Japan and produce in China and compare those, because Japan and China will obviously have different costs and whatnot, and sell in Europe and sell in America. Add all the scenarios that you want. When you're done adding all the scenarios, what you can do is you can generate a summary. Okay, so if I click summary, and it says, okay, so what's the result that you want in your summary? And that's going to be, you know, the net. Okay, that's what I'm going to compare and use to make my decisions after. Okay, so that's M6. Okay, and you can see it generates a whole new sheet here, and you can move them around if you want. And there's my scenario summary. You can see that it does include this column current values, which was the numbers that I had in there initially. What I often do is I just delete that one because it's just the various scenarios that I want to compare. Okay, so let's compare high quality phone. Okay, so I have a high revenue, also high costs, but I can see that in the end I did end up netting 13,000, whereas if I produce a low quality phone, I get a lot less in sales. You know, the costs are significantly less, but I end up with less money in the end. So I'm going to go this way, right, and produce a high quality phone, because according to my predictions, I should be able to make more money with that. Okay, so as you can see, scenario summaries are a very good way to compare things very quickly and make decisions from that. Okay, I'm going to clean up things a little bit. One thing I notice here is I get the cell reference, that reference M3, M4, etc. And that's kind of ugly. If I were to present this to, you know, my boss or my business partners or whatever, and they'd be like, that's a great, you know, table, but what the heck do those mean? Okay. And those, since they do reflect the name of the cell, let's just change the name of the cell. Okay. And a common mistake that people do is they actually change the name of this cell here. Okay, not this one, the one that actually contains the number. Okay, so let's change the name of this to revenue. Okay, and remember to hit enter. If you don't hit enter, it will not change. Okay, so now that's called revenue, and this will change it to be called cost, and we'll change this to be called net earnings. And do remember, if you want to use two words, you cannot use a space. It does not like a space. If you want something, you have to put an underscore. Okay, so be careful about that. Cannot use two words. If you do, you have to put an underscore. Okay, net earnings, costs, and that. These things, they cannot refresh. So if you make any changes, what you're going to have to do is delete this one and make a new thing here. Let's go back into our scenario summary. We have all those. Summary. Yes, that. Okay, there's my scenario summary. Delete that one, and here we have revenue, costs, net earnings. Okay, and a nice chart. So let's go to this slightly more complex example. I've set it up, everything's been formatted with dollars. I have named all of these cells, so this is named job, this is rent, food, utilities, etc. Okay, so that's all been set up correctly, named income, all ready to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and generate some scenarios. Okay, so you can see that with my current situation, right, this is what's currently going on. I have a job of $800 and I have my own, you know, pimpin' bachelor pad, right, where I can pick up all sorts of chicks and whatever. And that cost me $400. Food, utilities. I got a girlfriend, and she cost me $100. You know, she's high maintenance. Well, I guess that wouldn't be high maintenance. Maybe there are more expensive girlfriends. Well, nowadays you can even have girlfriends that will pay for you. But yeah, whatever you find. Okay. Anyways, I digress, as you usually know. Okay, so let's go to scenario manager. These ones I don't need them anymore. I'm going to just get rid of them. Delete. And I'm going to add a situation. Okay, so you know, with this current situation, I'm only saving $80, and you know, I'd like to, you know, save up, buy a car or something like that. So let's say I need to cut expenses. Okay, so I'm gonna make a scenario where I call it cut expenses. Okay, so changing cells. Let's go ahead and include all of these. I might also want to include this because I do want this included in my summary in the end, so I'm going to include that too. If you want to include that, click on that. And now I'm going to hold down the control key. So the control key lets me select multiple things. So this, control, and this. Okay, so you can see it selected B3, which is that, and then comma E3 to E8, so all of those. Okay, so let's go ahead and modify these. Job's going to stay the same, rent stays the same. Since I am cutting costs, I'm going to eat less. All right, I'm going to eat half as much. I'm going to, you know, turn down the heating, right? Use little electricity. I'm gonna have to get rid of the girlfriend, right? She's just costing me too much, right? Sorry, baby, gotta go. Okay, and beer. No, I can't. I can get rid of the girlfriend, but I gotta keep the beer. Okay, miscellaneous. Yeah, let's just leave that there. Okay, so there's my scenario of cutting costs. Okay, first scenario. Let's add another scenario. Okay, now let's call this scenario new job. Let's say, okay, I'm gonna keep my current situation, but you know, I just need to get a new job. Okay, and these are gonna stay the same, B3 and also E3 to E8. Okay, so those numbers are gonna stay the same. And with my new job, right, I'm gonna, you know, be a male gigolo, right, sell my body, whatever. Okay, and it pays a lot more, right? It's sacrifice. Yeah. Anyways, I won't get into the details of being a male gigolo, but it does pay more. Okay, and I'm gonna spend, and I'm gonna earn 1,500. Okay. And there's my new scenario. And I'm gonna add another scenario. So let's say I do dump my girlfriend, right? And I do get this new job. Let's say I do both. I dump my girlfriend and I get a new job. Let's see what I predict for that. Let's see. Okay, so job with no girl. Okay. And so, right, so 1,500, girlfriend goes down to 0. But I start to weigh in, like, what's going to happen if I dump my girlfriend? I say, okay, I'm going to have more time on my hands, and, you know, maybe I get a little bit depressed. Okay, so since I get depressed because I have no girlfriend and I'm selling my body, I'm going to, you know, eat a lot more. Okay, so that's going to go up to 150. And you know, I'm probably gonna develop a drinking problem. So, you know, 250 of beer. You know, I'd just start boozing it every night, hitting it hard, right? And not only do I develop a drinking problem, I you know, get hooked on like weed and all sorts of other crap. So, methamphetamines, and just so yeah, I've turned into quite the junkie, and yeah, that's gonna cost me a lot because these drugs aren't cheap. I don't know if you guys know what the cost of methamphetamines and weed are. I have no idea. But yeah. Anyways, I assume they're pretty steep. So there we go. Have a very high cost because of my depression. Okay, so I have all those scenarios, and you can generate as much as you want. Yeah, mine are pretty stupid, but whatever. Let's generate a summary. So generating a summary, let's see, these are the cells that I actually want in my summary. So how the job and how all these expenses, in the end, how do they affect my income, expenses, and savings? Okay, so let's do that again. So selecting these, grab those two, and then pressing the control key, click on that one. Okay, so now we have our nice scenario summary, right? Here's my current situation. Where I only have $80 of savings. This is what happens if I try to cut my expenses, right? Cutting expenses, I end up with more savings. And if I get that new job, right? If nothing else changes, right? That would be great, right? I would have huge amounts of savings. But I also have to consider that doing something like that, back-breaking work or whatever is breaking, there could be consequences, and having those consequences, it does lead to savings of that amount. So based on these situations, I can kind of decide, do I want to keep going how I'm going? Do I want to take a chance and do this? Or do I want to take a chance and do this and risk having that? Okay, so that is basically how you do scenario summaries, used for making decisions based on changes in various ways.